Hey friends, my name is Jonathan Page. I work here at the Virginia Conference Office, and one of my responsibilities is our annual conference session. I know it's cold outside and it's hard to believe that we'd be thinking about something in June, but it is time for us to start preparing for our annual conference session this June in Roanoke, Virginia. This year, our theme is about the movement of the heart. You may remember last year we introduced a conference in 3 movements, the idea being that we would present 3 general movements of how God is at work in the church, and then over the next 3 years we'd be presenting each of those movements one by one. This year we're going to be thinking about the movement of the heart, which is really the focus on how God transforms us and how God molds and shapes us and allows us to be agents of change in and around our community. This year at Annual Conference, I'm excited that we're going to have 3 principal speakers who are helping to guide our conversation about the movement of the heart. The first of those is Reverend Dr. Candace Lewis. Dr. Lewis is the Dean of Gammon Theological Seminary, and I think she's going to be an amazing and gifted speaker. She's also going to be a preacher at one of our worship services. The second is Reverend Dr. Edgardo Colon-Emerick. Dr. Colon-Emerick is the Dean of Duke Divinity School. And is a gifted speaker and is going to lead us well, especially in thinking about movements of the heart that lead towards reconciliation. And our third speaker is Scott Erickson. Now, Scott comes to us from outside the United Methodist family. If you follow social media, you may be aware of his Instagram account, Scott the Painter, or have seen some of his art in and around our Virginia Annual Conference, but Scott's going to do a great job of leading us as well. I'm really excited for each of these speakers and think that they're going to lead the teaching elements of our annual conference session well. In addition to speakers who are going to be teaching us, we also have folks who are going to be preaching at this annual conference session, leading us in times of worship. I'm excited that Bishop Sue Hoppert Johnson, our resident bishop here in the Virginia Annual Conference, is going to be leading and preaching our opening worship service. Dr. Lewis, who I mentioned earlier, Candace Lewis, is going to be preaching our memorial service. And this year's ordination service is going to be preached by Bishop Ken Carter from the Western North Carolina area of the United Methodist Church. We're going to be really blessed by these phenomenal preachers who are helping to lead times of worship at Annual Conference. Now, one of the things you should know about this annual conference session is just some of the logistics that are coming. This year's annual conference session is happening in Roanoke, Virginia at the Berglund Center. Something important is to note the dates of annual conference. Annual conference this year is going to happen June 11th through the 14th. Now, if you're hearing that and you say June 11th, gosh, that sounds a little early. It is one day earlier for our clergy session only. So for clergy in our annual conference, you'll need to plan and prepare to arrive on Wednesday afternoon when our clergy session will take place in the Performing Arts Center at the Berglund Center. For laity and folks who might be guests, you don't need to arrive until Thursday when opening worship will happen on Thursday morning, June 12th. Now, one of the things that we recognize is with that date shift, last year we did annual conference over a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We're asking clergy to come a day earlier. This is because of the amount that's in our agenda this year. I'll tell you more about that in just a few moments. But one thing that we want to do from the annual conference office is do our best to offset some of the cost that comes from that. So if you would look at that and say, hey, that's going to be a burden on our church, we will have a voucher available for churches to apply for up to $100 of relief on housing at annual conference. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, if you think that's something that's really important for your church, we recognize we're asking folks to arrive a little bit early, but the business is such that we think this is an important ask and a good use of our time. And so we're going to extend that offer if that's something that your church or your charge could use to help support that. We'd like you to plan on that. Amongst the business happening at this annual conference session, we have reports that will be happening, both video reports ahead of time and also reports that'll happen in person. This is also a voting year at annual conference. Now, sometimes when we use the term voting year, we mean voting for delegates or for people for different things. This year, what we mean when we say a voting year is that we are going to have votes on constitutional amendments that were supported by the 2024 General Conference. And so because of that, we'll need folks to be prepared to hear about those amendments, to discuss those as we feel led to on the floor, and then to vote on those. We'll have more information forthcoming in the upcoming weeks about what that voting will look like and maybe what you'll need to do to prepare to vote well at this annual conference session. So those are the big highlights that I want to share with you today. But today is certainly not the last communication that we'll have about annual conference. In fact, it's the first of many. But there are some important dates that you need to look forward to that are coming up in the relatively near future. The first of those is housing for annual conference will open. You'll be able to go to the conference website and access information about housing details and how to get registered for that. But that's the way that you'll figure out which hotel you're staying at or what property you'd like to be accommodated at for the annual conference session. We will be opening childcare registration. Childcare this year is going to be available for folks, and there is a fee involved, but that's an option that's going to be available to you, and more information will be available. Last but not least, displays are also going to have a registration opening. That's going to happen on February 24th. So if you're part of an organization or an initiative that would like to have a display, you'll be able to register for that beginning on February 24th. All right, so just a couple other things related to annual conference session. First, now is a really good time to make sure you know where your clergy badge for annual conference is. This clergy badge is going to be able to get you in for our clergy people to the clergy session, and it's important to make sure you have that nearby. This may play a role in not only registration for annual conference session, it helps us to do some tracking and to think about how we're doing voting. If for whatever reason you can't locate your badge, we'd ask that you contact Chris Malik in our conference office so that we can begin to work on getting you a new badge and making sure that that's ready for annual conference. But hopefully you have yours from last year, and we'll continue to hold on to that as we'll need that not only at this annual conference session, but annual conference sessions moving forward. Last but not least, I want to offer a note about the Book of Reports. Historically, we've had a Book of Reports deadline sometime in the early spring. We've printed some copies of it, and we've had it available for folks in late May. This year, we're going to shift that timeline just a little bit, and we're going to shift the outcome of that just a little bit. So the deadline for the Book of Reports is not going to come until later in the spring, likely sometime in mid to late April. What's going to happen as a result of that is we will not be printing any copies of the Book of Reports for folks. But the Book of Reports will be a part of the overall official packet that'll be made available in late May to every person attending our annual conference session. From there, if you'd like to print your own bound version of Book of Reports, if you'd like to make posters of it, you can kind of do whatever you'd like with it, and you'll have access to it to be able to do that on your own. But this is a way for us to be better stewards of our resources and to make sure not only that we're not printing things unnecessarily, but also good stewards of the environment and being able to make sure that everybody has access as needed to the Book of Reports and to information that's important for annual conference sessions. So you can look forward again to that deadline happening sometime in April, and then the information itself will be available in late May. All right, so that's been a number of different things that we've covered today about our annual conference session forthcoming in June. I'm excited. I think it's great whenever we can get together as United Methodists. I think it's great that our annual conference session is a time where we're able to worship together, where we're able to fellowship together, where we can learn together, where we can do business together, but most of all, hopefully we are being formed into a loving community by Almighty God who loves us and binds us together in these moments and in all the moments that are to come. So if you have any questions about anything you've heard in this video, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is below. I'd love to be in touch with you, and know that you'll be seeing more information about annual conference session coming up in the subsequent weeks. But for now, we're grateful for all of you in the Virginia Annual Conference, and we're looking forward to an amazing annual conference session this June in Roanoke, Virginia.